So this Women's Day, I'm going to try and, in our little small corner of the internet, try and put the focus on the people it should have been on right from the start, right? So I'm going to talk about some relatively lesser known women's movements. And I want to caveat here, at least I didn't know about them. So they might be more well known amongst other people. So don't hold me to that. Okay. And their history that stands for everything these businesses don't, which is socialist feminism.
पता नहीं क्या मूवी है, मेरे को इसका कॉन्सेप्ट आज तक समझ नहीं आया
What?
उस मूवी का.
It's a child killing
What do you
clown. That's
mean?
basically the entire
I
concept.
know, but it's not scary. It's not. I don't know. It's not horror. It's not very engaging. I don't know that movie. I don't understand
It is
that movie.
supposed to be
मैं
horror,
horror.
right?
It is horror. Read the
But it's
book.
not
The book
horror.
is quite good.
No,
Don't read Stephen King anymore. He's
Oh, really?
yeah.
What did he do?
He is left of center, but he's been very tiny bit problematic in the past couple of years. Like on all his tweets and stuff, they're a bit.
Oh, what did he say? These
He's
old men, they should just take away, as soon as you hit 50, take away all technology from you. You do not get access to talk to the public.
yeah.
Absolutely insane people. You know, the best place where two platforms where people will absolutely destroy you if you come with such nonsense on specific threads is Reddit and Tumblr. I find Tumblr a little bit better than Reddit because I don't see too many nonsense people over there, but that might be just my algorithm. Reddit in specific channels, if you go and try to be a dick, like there was this one guy who had come to a Palestine channel and he was like, I support Israel, but it is the current government and the settlers that I do not support. And people ripped him a new one. They were like, I mean, that's a basic point. Like, please educate yourself. Like, you know, you hold an opinion that is devoid of any factual backing. In 2026, like, okay, maybe you haven't read a book, maybe Google. Doesn't take too long. Maybe listen to a podcast. It's super easy. Watch a YouTube video. Like there are so many passive ways of consuming content these days. You don't really need to make an effort. We had to make efforts when we were children, and then things got super easy for us to in as far as getting information is concerned. So I don't know. I don't understand how you still manage, anybody still manages to have these kind of opinions that are in public discourse so much. Okay, we are going to kick off. I have no segues as usual, so I'm not even going to try. But essentially, this episode comes out. Rifraka, don't roll your eyes at me.
I
Well,
will not even
Ashmita,
try.
you're a woman and you're doing a topic on Women's Day. That's your segue. Go ahead.
That is a horrible segue. But anyway, this
Well, it's better.
basically,
It's better than no segue at all. You know.
but
No, I
essentially,
think
yes, this
there
is,
can be a
yeah.
segue. Are you guys
What is
excited for
that?
the new Ted Lasso's season?
Oh, yes, I am.
I am
It's
so
coming out in
excited.
August.
I'm so excited because I've been seeing all of these videos that people have they've shot these videos of them shooting
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's circulating on Instagram and social media. I'm so really excited. And I rewatched,
Yeah.
you know what? I rewatched the entire first and second. I think it was the third season, no? Or fourth.
Fourth season. Fourth season.
This is the fourth
This is
season.
fourth season. So I watched first, second, and third season again, and
Amazing.
now I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm also
And the
very
new
excited.
season is about what,
But a
Ashmita?
Richmond women's football team.
Yeah.
And talking about, I mean, it's like I appreciate the tenuous effort from both of you all to talk about literally half of the population, but I did not have any. So, anyway. And now, by now, our listeners must have understood that because this episode comes out right after Women's Day, we are going to be talking about something related to Women's Day. But if you've been listening to this podcast for a while now, then you also know that it's going to be a little depressing. We are going to talk about some darker aspects about feminism, particularly in India. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to give a caveat. I want to, not a caveat. I want to give you my chain of thoughts, right? How I reached to talking about specific feminist movements in India, right? So essentially, over the past few years, and you all might have seen this. I don't know if you remember this. I have spent Women's Day getting really, really annoyed at corporations. Like, Women's Day started off in the 1900s as an
Mm.
homage to the many, many women's movements that were coming up across the globe, right? Like, 1900s was when sort of a collective action started being taken for women's rights, for education, for a lot of times for not just basic things like voting, etc., but often against violence. Like, it has a murky history, right? Not because Women's Day had anything wrong with it, but because the patriarchal setup of the society was quite terrible, right? So initially, when Women's Day started off, it was an homage to this. It was acknowledging and celebrating a day which sees the struggle that
Mm.
our ancestors have had over centuries, right?
Yeah.
And then capitalism took over, and came along a bunch of absolute assholes in the boardroom who decided to use the history of suffrage and labor rights and right to education and right to property and all other basic rights. They took all of this and then they turned them into horrible ads by people who cannot even spell suffrage. And I can honestly point you to a million ads, but I want to show you this particular one when Misguided, it's an organization that tweeted out for, I mean, wishing people happy International Day. And what the gender pay gap, it's a bot, gender pay gap bot said. And this was in 2022. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For the listeners, I'm showing the guys a tweet by Misguided, which, let me actually read it out. It says, Happy International Women's Day. We are paying it forward this IWD and we are giving away prizes throughout the day, including 2 times lots of £1,000 cash. To win, tweet us using pay it forward with Misguided and share the best piece of advice you have received.
Mm.
Okay? Terms and conditions apply, right? And firstly, this tweet itself is absolutely like low effort nonsense, right? But look at what Gender Pay Gap tweeted. In this organization, women's median hourly pay is 40% lower than men. And if this does not describe like Women's Day at its what corporates have been doing, there's nothing else that does. This is perfect,
Well, the company seems to
right?
be named aptly, no? They seem misguided, so that's fine.
Right? So it's been a cesspool for a while because of, much like most of the things that's wrong in the world, because of capitalism, right? So this Women's Day, I'm going to try and, in our little small corner of the internet, try and put the focus on the people it should have been on right from the start, right? So I'm going to talk about some relatively lesser known women's movements. And I want to caveat here, at least I didn't know about them. So they might be more well known amongst other people. So don't hold me to that. Okay. And their history that stands for everything these businesses don't, which is socialist feminism, right? Which, without an iota of doubt, socialist feminism is the only kind of feminism. If your feminism aligns with capitalism or conservatism or nationalism, sue your school, right? You had a right to education and they didn't teach you jack shit, right? So the only form of feminism that is acceptable is socialist feminism. Everything else is actually against women. So do not adopt that kind of feminism, right? So we are going to talk about socialist movements by women And they were very much socialist feminism movements, right? And these
Hmm.
movements are, like I mentioned on the top of the episode, they're India centric, mostly because we know a lot about Western movements. Like when I, as a young girl, I started reading, and at that time it was only reading. There was not much watching to be done about feminism. I got to know about the Western waves of feminism far before I got to know about anything to do with feminism in India and Asia. There has been an immense amount of work that has happened in India, because
Hmm.
women in India did not just have to fight patriarchy, they also had to fight imperialism, right? So it was a double whammy, and it was an extremely difficult uphill journey,
Hmm.
right? So, like I said, within this small audience, I'd like to spotlight the women who were doing the real work all
Mm.
along,
Okay, very briefly
right?
before you start, Ashmita, I think there
Yeah.
for a very long time there has been this sort of misconception around the term socialist or socialism. Would you very briefly explain to our listeners and viewers what socialism is in a nutshell and why it is not what most people think it is? A lot of people associate socialism with the communist ideology and how it is something bad. Like nobody will be able to
Okay.
earn money and nobody will be, able to get rich. Whereas that could not be farther from the truth, right?
Yeah,
So,
that is categorically untrue.
yes. So,
First of all, if you, one thing that I would encourage readers to do, if you really want to understand what Marxist communism also stood for, and not take communism from the megalomaniacs called like Mao and fucking Stalin, please read Das Kapital. It's actually pretty fucking fantastic. Communism seems to have a PR problem. But let's talk about the more
they know
digestible
whom to
form
reach for their
of,
PR issues.
wow. Another, what is the digestible form of communism seems to be socialism, to be very honest. I personally, again, I'm not an expert, but I don't see much of a difference in the concept, right? There are socialist economies that are not communist, and they are doing exceptionally well. Like, you all should look this up, right? What socialism stands for is that you do not get to take the money of other people's labor and keep it for yourself. What capitalism does, right? Socialism says that nobody can be poor. You can be rich, friend. People should be valued for the value they bring in the society, right? As individuals, also, there are a lot of people who are not going to be productive in a society. That doesn't mean that they don't hold values as human beings. So if we talk just about the labor and money part, right, which is a very, very, very small part of socialism, right? It just means if I am providing my labor, I should be paid for it. And if you are taking labor from me to produce, like the business owners, right, to produce goods and services, you should not be able to personally keep the maximum portion of my labor's worth. And
Hmm.
that's such a basic concept, right? And I also want to say that if you are working for somebody, you should not be a capitalist, friend. If you're pro capitalist and you're working for somebody, you're literally against yourself. One of the worst things that us in the talentless mid management have done is not made a union for ourselves. And look at how we are
Hmm.
getting fucked over everywhere. It's the easiest fucking job to lose. Like, apart from the top 1% of the world, everybody should be a socialist. And if you're not, it's because you don't know enough about it. Right. And this episode also is going to, Sandy, to your point, it's also going to make it clearer as we go ahead, right? That what a socialist system or what socialist feminism actually looks like. But from a feminism perspective, it is for the people, it is for common working class people, women, right? Because at that time, especially the point of time we are going to start off, and even today, women did not have a lot of rights, very,
Hmm.
very basic rights. Yeah. Does that, did I clarify anything?
Yeah, I think I asked for it in a nutshell. That was a big enough nutshell, but still it works. So,
That's always the case with me,
yes,
Sandy.
yes, yes,
You
I don't.
know better by now not to ask me something that I can say in 3 lines. That's never going to happen.
yes, I know. Well, at least we failed the last 5 minutes, so that's good.
Yeah.
That was
Anyway.
a big enough nutshell. Sandy and his words, man.
Okay, we are going to start off with the first one, which is Bharat's three Mahamandal. Have you guys heard of this?
Yes.
Bharat's three Mahamandal is called the Great Circle of Indian Women. You've heard of
Yep.
this? It was essentially the first all women organization in India, right?
Hmm.
And we're going to start off with this because this marks a significant change in the way we were doing things, right? So, Wikipedia, with its disappointingly small entry, says this was a national levels women organization in India founded by Sarla Devi Chaudharani in Allahabad in 1910. For those of you who don't recognize the word Allahabad, I don't want to talk to you. I absolutely do not want to talk to you. If you only see Prayagraj, please exit the podcast right now.
Well,
Anyway,
now at least they know
Wikipedia
what you are
continues.
referring to. Now they got the context.
Pra- Wikipedia continues. One of the primary goals of the organization was to promote female education, which at that time was not well developed. The organization opened several offices in Lahore, Delhi, Karachi, Amritsar, Hyderabad, Kanpur, Bankura, Hazaribad, Midnapur, Prayagraj, and Kolkata to improve the situation of women all over India. The organization did not have any British women or men serving on its committee, right? The Wikipedia has very, very little information, and honestly, online there's very little information on this, despite the fact that this was the first women's organization that was founded by women. And this is, by the way, in 1910. So it's something that you'll notice throughout the episode and in the history of women's organizations. All of them have been far too recent. Like 1910 is about a century back. It seems absolutely wild to me that till 1910 we did not have a women's organization that was run by women. That's not to say, by the way, that there weren't individual women working towards social issues from far before, right? For instance, Savitribai Phule, she started the first ever school for girls in the country in 1848 in Pune. That was really something. But organizations working in sort of an organized structure, that began quite late, right? And again, the information online is absolutely, abysmal. Like, I can find more things written about fucking Andrew Tate and his fucking bootlickers than about actual useful things and people who actually created a difference in the world worth talking about, right? So, most of the information I have gotten for Bharat Sri Mahamandal was from a book called Women in Modern India by, and
Hmm.
it's, I want to actually read the whole thing because this particular one was in volume 4, so there are more, but by Geraldine Forbes, an American author, a well respected author in the field, but I couldn't find anything written by Indian or even Asian women authors or people in academia on this,
Hmm.
which is again a little disappointing to me, right? Anyway, so in this book, Forbes begins with the reform movement established by men to educate women, which did happen. And she then, throughout the book, demonstrates how education changed women's lives by enabling them to take part in public life. And we have seen this across all civil movements. For example, when the civil rights movement in US started, and black people, they were at that point of time still slaves and they were fighting for their rights. A lot of white people's arguments were that they can't take care of themselves. They don't know how to, like, they are incapable of handling things themselves. And then the few black people who were allowed education, they went out and they proved that they could. So, like any other person, if you are educated, you have the opportunity to change things for yourselves and for society, right?
mm,
But white people did not let black people get educated, so they did not have that opportunity. Same case with women's rights. Like, women were not allowed to be educated, and then they were said that they don't know how the world works and how they cannot handle their own life on their own. And then women started getting educated and started proving that wrong, right? So Forbes, in her book, she takes us through this from an Indian context through their own accounts of lives and activities. Forbes documents the formation of these organizations, their participation in the struggle for freedom, because women were fighting a dual battle, and their role in the colonial economy and development of women's movement in India since 1947, right? So it's a very, very extensive book. About the formation of Bharat Sri Mahamandal, she says, and I'm quoting now, okay? Women began to define their interests, propose solutions, and take action only after they formed their own associations. Women's associations, called by various titles, sprang up all over India in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Most were geographically limited, but they shared the goal of bringing women together to discuss women's issues. Sarla Devi Chaudharani, critical of the women's meetings held in conjunction with the Indian National Social Conference, called for a permanent association of Indian women. So, while Indian National Social Conference was being held for India at large, naturally, if you don't have women in leadership, you're not going to have women's issues being talked about, right? So when she did this, I continue the quote, women responded favorably and Sarla Devi began planning the first meeting. When male colleagues criticized her, she charged them with patronizing women. These men, she wrote, advertise themselves as champions of the weaker sex, equal opportunities for women, and female education and female emancipation, which they make their pet subjects of oratory at the annual show. These men lived in the shade of Manu, she charged, and were unwilling to allow women independent action. Sarla Devi's organization, the Bharat Sri Mandal, had its first meeting in Allahabad in 1910. This is a very, very, again, a pattern that has always continued, right? You can draw a straight line between people who are anti-socialists, like they're strung up on individual action and they're too pro-capitalist and no state overview and everything, to people who are religious in an organizational structure. Like they don't just follow religion in their own homes, they need society to be religious. To people who are sexist and misogynist assholes, to right wingers. Like, I'm not making this up. This is literally a straight line, right? So there have always been these issues, and the goal of the organization that Sarla Devi created was to bring, as she put it, the women of every race, creed, class, and party on the basis of their common interests in the more moral and material progress of women of India. You and I can't even imagine the kind of challenges they faced at that point of time. For instance, one of the biggest problem for women's education was that parda was still largely a prevalent practice in India, right? Which they considered to be the main hindrance to women's education, and I am inclined to agree, because many young girls and women did not even have access to opportunities because they were simply not allowed to go out. They were not allowed to go to school, right? So this organization then started sending teachers to the homes
mm,
of these girls and women. This was the first time that women started coming together as a formalized structure against not just the society at large, but also against men they had worked with in
mm,
socialist circles who were like, you can't do this, right? So they had to fight quite a few battles. Having said this, having said that they did an immense amount of good, there were also some issues. And because I
Hmm.
can't leave a good thing be, we are also going to get into some of the issues, right? And remember, we are talking about 1910, and these women were coming from like a lot of suppression. So I am going to, my sympathies still lie with them, but there were some issues, and we are going to talk about that.
Talking about some issues. Hopefully, there's an ad about some really relevant issue that pops up right about here. But if it's not, then just listen to the ad. That also works for us. See you on the other side. All right, welcome back to the show. Hopefully, that ad was about some very relevant issue, but if it's not, we're sorry about that. Back to you, Ashmita.
We were talking about Bharat Sri Mahamandal, and we were just about to start talking about some of the issues that they had. So I'm quoting again from Forbes' book. Women leaders were defining women's issues as female education, child marriage, the observance of parda, and women's status in the family. Many of them believed all women shared the same problems. Clearly, they
Hmm.
spoke from a specific class orientation, but they did so at a time when there was considerable prejudice against female education, child marriage was preferred, and widow remarriage was unheard of in respectable families. Female seclusion and sex segregation prevailed, but strict parda was practiced only in some parts of India. I want to just pause here for a second and I want to talk about this. The fact that parda was considered to be one of the biggest challenges, just that itself clearly shows the class orientation. Because parda was a privileged class thing. If you all
Hmm.
remember from our, from our school's history, people of underprivileged castes and oppressed castes were actually not even allowed, women were sometimes not even allowed to cover their torso. It was a
Hmm.
form of humiliation. Parda was seen as a form of respect, but also, I mean, women were oppressed throughout. Privileged castes were oppressed differently than oppressed castes as a whole. So that itself was a giveaway. But then there were other things, right? So I'm going to continue what Forbes said. I quote, when they assumed all women experienced difficulties with in laws, they were drawing on experience. Their evaluation of women's status in the family was based on their knowledge of laws and personal observation. If asked for examples to verify their perceptions, many of these women would have recounted stories of their relatives, their servants, and what they had heard from a vast network of informants. In a limited way, they understood many of the problems shared by all women. What they did not share was the same economic base as the women they claim to represent. This is what Forbes is saying. I would venture out to say that they did not, more than economic base, they also did not share social basis, which, if you are reading literally anything to do with the Dalit and Adivasi community in India, you would know that the social aspects, they are the root cause of the economic
Hmm.
problems, right? I continue the quote. Hence, the perception of the viability of certain options were limited to women like themselves. They set up girls' schools, widows' shelters, and handicraft training centers to help only women from their own class. The rural poor would not have been able to send their daughters to school even if they favored female education. Widows'
Hmm.
homes were suitable for women from respectable families who needed to earn some money, but often these homes were restricted to Brahmin widows, like the widows' homes that they built.
Yeah.
Handicraft production, particularly sewing and embroidery, enabled only some high caste women to earn a living because they had access to a clientele, homes they could live in, and space to work. Jelly Lam, widowed in 1898 at age 28, with two children, earned a living embroidering saris. She was famous for her skill in Chinese embroidery, then the rage in women's fashion, and was able to support herself and her children in a respectable manner. But the family standard of living was not due to her earnings alone. Her husband left her some property. In defining women's problems and suggesting suitable remedies, the founders of these early women's organizations tended to look at women like J.G., not Jelly, J.G. Lam as models. Consequently, these institutions were able to serve some of the unfortunate women of their own class, but few others. This is not a 1910 problem. This continues to be a problem today, right? I remember we were talking about quota and reservation and everything in my B school. And again, I would emphasize that B school is not necessarily a place where the most sensitive and people who actually want to create a difference in the world gather. That's not what B schools are remotely known for. So, probably not the best group to talk about
I
this.
think the word you're looking for is empathetic, Ashmita.
Yes, that is correct. They were not. That is the word I was looking for. So not the most empathetic bunch of people. And we were talking about this, and I think that they represent what a lot of the anger towards reservation is about. Is that if you want more women to come into, say, B schools or organizations, instead of giving a percentage assigned to them, why not increase the number of people who are applying? When I had put up this contention that you call this school diverse, sure, from a global perspective, yes. Show me one person from India. We were 40 people. Show me one person from India who has come from a socioeconomic background that's not similar to ours, right? That is oppressed, that has been challenged and in a bad shape for a long time. Show me one person. There wasn't any, right? And the question was that there's reservation already. Why don't they apply? Because they don't get loans. Dalits are still rejected majority of the loans that they ask for because historically they have not been given access to property, to businesses. They have not been allowed to do any work till well into the 20th century, my friend. And in many, many parts of the country, even today, in 2026, they're not allowed, not just different vocations, not just different professions, they are not allowed education, they are not allowed access to water and common areas. That still exists, right? So, this is a problem that is consistent with organizations that work towards a particular issue by working only on individuals and not challenging the system itself, because the problem is not with individuals, the problem is more often than not systemic, right? So while the Bharat Sri Mahamandal was definitely a movement for a section of women, it wasn't exactly socialist feminist, right? Like the founder herself, right? Salla Devi Chaudharani. She came from Rabindranath Tagore's family. As far as privilege goes, for women who did not have too much of privilege, this was on the higher end, unfortunately, right? And even in global issues, global movements at the time, intersectional, oh my God, intersectionality
Intersection.
was a major issue. And to a large extent, that's something that we are yet to address materially, right?
And apparently,
Having
saying intersectionality is also an issue, Ashmita.
that's very me specific. I trip on the most common words. Intersectionality at least has more syllables for me to trip on. I still want to caveat this. I feel it is necessary to. This group still did some amazing work. They had a very
Of
serious
course.
blind spot, but it's 1910. Like they are already fighting a million things, and they missed out on an important thing,
Of course.
but they
Yeah.
also did good. Yeah. I feel like saying this because I feel like a lot of people take issues of, and this has come from, I think, me working in sustainability.
No,
Like,
but
there are,
this is something that you remember that podcast we were watching yesterday, and one of the most pertinent points was there are a lot of people, so anyone who is doing any kind of good work, any kind of social work out there in the world, there will always be a bunch of people who will come out and say, okay, you're doing this, but why not doing this? This is a bigger issue.
Hmm.
But the key takeaway from this should be that at least you are doing something.
Yeah,
Not the fact that you're not doing something for this other section of people as well. So at least you
exactly.
started the change, right?
Yeah.
However small it may
And
be.
it's also, I think it's a little different in this case because this
Yeah,
is
yeah, of
not,
course. But that's just
you
an
know,
analogy I'm drawing. But I think, and you will always find that section of people across the board. So that is
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also this expectation of when you do something well, people expect you to be perfect. But we continuously let shitty people get away with shitty things, right?
Hmm.
Which is why I despise the pressure on individuals to make all the change, right? Like with relation to climate change. I mean, people talk about, I don't know if I told you about this lady. She was the ex-president of Shell in, I will not mention which country
Hmm.
because it will get very obvious. So she said that I was talking to her about a panel, and there would be a person from the German embassy and there would be a person from, she was doing a lot of great work in climate change, climate change action, basically. And I was like, these are people who will not pull their punches. So one of the questions that you can expect is, what right do you have to talk about climate
Hmm.
action when Shell has single handedly caused the climate crisis? And her response to me was, everybody questions Shell on this, but nobody even pauses before taking a flight to New York. I was dumbfounded. I was like,
Hmm.
I think that solidified my opinion that one, oil and gas corporations are absolutely evil little fucks. And second, you don't need to be a smart person to be at the top. If the president of Shell Corporation thinks Shell drilling in the fucking Arctic is the same as one person taking a flight to New York and cannot compare scales in her head, dumbasses are ruling the world. Right. So anyway, that's a
What's
very
her name,
different
Ashmita?
digression.
Maybe people would like to find out.
Absolutely not. Absolutely fucking not.
It's okay. You're telling us in confidence. It's okay.
Nope.
This should stay a
Absolutely
secret
fucking
between
not.
us, Ashmita. It's okay.
Anyway, individual action will always have its limitation, right? People who are coming together to fix an issue, even today, like I see this in sustainability all the fucking time, that brands that are genuinely doing some good work, they cannot be perfect, but they are genuinely doing some good work. All of the question comes to them. And
Hmm.
then very openly, we continue purchasing from shitty brands. Might as well go towards brands that are doing 80% of the work. Maybe they are not doing 100% yet, but it's better than doing 0% of the work, right?
Hmm.
It
It's a
is
wild thing.
practically impossible to be 100% correct all the time. That is what perfection is, and there is
Exactly.
no such thing as perfection. Perfection is impossible.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So
Exactly. The expectation that one company, one brand, one individual has to do everything correctly also comes from the same thought process
Yeah.
of individual action, right? Like individualistic capitalist sort of pro-capitalist sort of structures. Well, that's not how we function. Like we have always worked well and we have always done well as communities where one person does their part and another person does another part, and there is accountability and overview on each other's paths, and that's how you do it better. So anyway, that's why I felt right at the end, I want to, usually when I talk about things that any organization did wrong, I don't give too many caveats because I feel like it should be very obvious, but in this case I did want to mention that they did immense good, friends. Like, don't get hung up on this. I'm just giving information and why we need to include diverse voices within our movements. Why intersectionality is such a major thing and has to be included, right? Now, that brings me to more of a socialist movement. Some people are going to be triggered by this because it's also a communist movement. And again, if you are randomly triggered by communism, Please just read Das Kapital. Like, don't come at me. Like, I do not entertain people talking about communism who haven't even read the very basics of communism. You don't
Triggering
know
people
jack shit.
seems to be so out of character for you, Ashmita. What brought this upon? Hmm?
Anyway, so the second organization is called Mahila Atma Raksha Samiti. Hey, have you all heard of this?
Mass? No.
Mhm.
Mars. Yes, they're it's literally no, that's true. It's abbreviated as Mars. They are referred as Mars in a lot of places.
Oh,
Yeah.
Did they
Quite
find
nice.
signs of life
funny,
there?
funny, funny.
Not since Elon Musk started trying.
Fair enough.
Okay. So
Okay,
this
fair enough.
organization, translated to Women's Self-Defense Organization, was a women's rights organization in Bengal and was linked to the CPIM, Communist Party of India. Right? Wikipedia says Mars was founded in 1942 in the midst of Second World War and on the eve of the Great Bengal Famine. Calcutta was filled with women fleeing the famine in the countryside, becoming prey for sexual exploitation, either sent to military camps or lured or forced into prostitution in the city. Guys, I read about this. I did not have the heart to include it here because it is.
Hmm.
Can you imagine starving and dying, and at the same point of time being raped and murdered by soldiers, by or by their own community that was selling them into prostitution?
Hmm.
Right? It was, oh my god, some of the accounts are really horrible. I continue what Wikipedia says. The number of women in the brothels of Calcutta doubled. Incidents of sexual abuse or kidnappings of local women by American soldiers were taking place. In reaction to these developments, a group of communist women,
American soldiers, how do
yeah,
they figure?
eve of Second World War, I mean, basically there were women who were sold to American soldiers because Americans were winning at that point of time, right? The Allied
Yeah, but
forces
Americans where? Like in Europe?
in Europe, but also remember we talked about this Indian Free India Legion.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
When they came back, American soldiers came back with them also. They brought them here.
Ah, okay. Makes sense. Okay.
So that also
Mm-hmm.
happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of movement of people. Mars did a bunch of things, right? They supported the struggle for Indian independence. They instructed women in self defense. They warned against fascism, demanded release of political prisoners. Also, like, worked a lot towards defending the population from starvation. They organized relief during the Bengal famine. The second one, 42, 43. But one of the main contributions that I found that is detailed a little bit more is the
Hmm.
Tebaga movement. It's Tebhaga. To be very honest, I feel like I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but I don't know how else to do this. Tebaga is what it sounds like to me.
I mean, I'm sure it was in Bengali, if I'm not mistaken. You must know how it is pronounced.
I do not. It is really sad, but I do not. And this is a significant peasant agitation initiated in Bengal by the All India Kisan Sabha of the Peasant Front of Communist Party of India. Do you guys know about the peasant revolution that happened in 46, 47 ish?
I'm very certain I might have read about it or learnt about it, but I don't recall it, unfortunately.
Yes,
Hmm.
we have. And I was so mad while reading this because we have read about the peasant revolution. So, about this movement at that time, and I will tell you why I'm mad after that. Okay, I will first quote
Hmm.
this out to you. Wikipedia says at that time, landlords required tenant farmers and sharecroppers to provide half of the crops to the landlords. The demand of the Tebhaga, sharing by thirds, Tebhaga.
Yeah, that makes more
Hmm.
sense now. Yes.
Yes, the demand of the, but I still don't know if the pronunciation is correct. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't sound like a Bengali word to me,
Well,
which
neither do our
is,
listeners and viewers, so that's fine.
yeah, okay. The demand of the Tebaga movement was to reduce the landlord share to one third. In many areas, the agitations turned violent. Landlords fled, leaving parts of the countryside in the hands of the Kisan Sabha. In 1946, sharecroppers began to assert that they would pay only one third and that before division, the crop would stay in their godowns and not that of the jotedars. Jotedars are landlords, right? Why this made me mad? Because while reading about this movement, I remembered reading about this in school. There was a very little mention. Like, I never heard about Mars in school, about this women's
Hmm.
organization. And they were one of the largest groups in this organization. Like, Kisan Sabha would have absolutely crumbled to little bits if this women's organization, Mars, was not there. And we weren't taught that.
You know
We
what,
weren't, I
Ashmita?
have read about this. Yeah.
Imagine this. Children these days are not being taught the Mughal history, which is about like 400, 500 years of Indian history. They
Yeah.
absolutely, they will have no idea. A large chunk of Indian civilization will be missing from their
Hmm.
education. Like a huge chunk of Indian
I
history.
mean, that doesn't make me any less mad about the fact that
Yeah,
I was not taught the right things.
yeah, no, no, absolutely. You're right. I'm
Yeah.
saying like this
It's
is
just gotten
this.
worse.
Yeah, it's if anything, it's gotten worse.
Yes, that we know about the country in general. I mean, did we really need to come to 2026 to understand that?
No,
In
but if you look at
2014,
if you want me to look at a silver lining, even if you're not, I'm still looking at the silver lining, is the fact that the lesser they know, the more ignorant they'll be. And the more ignorant you are, the more blissful you are. So I guess overall they'll be happier, I suppose, by that logic. I don't
sure,
know.
I mean, there are no jobs, the economy is going to shit, but I'm sure kids graduating into a fuck all market that cannot support them at all would be extremely happy not knowing about 400, 500 years of history, 400, 500 years back, like, which would
Yeah,
have
yeah,
made
but
so much
at least they can
difference
look
in their
forward to the
lives.
15 lakhs in their accounts. So that will be
Oh,
dropping anytime
yes, that
soon.
is true.
So that's fine. That's fine. They'll be taken care
Yes,
of.
yeah, that should help
Yeah,
set them
definitely.
up. Okay, so the information actually about Mas's role in this peasants' uprising, it comes from this book called, at least I got it, from this book called A Field of One's Own Gender and Land Rights in South Asia by Beena Agarwal. She talks about the movement and the role of women as a whole and Mas in it. It's quite a good account, right? And I'm going to quote
Hmm.
from this to talk about the Tebhaga movement. Within the prevailing agrarian relations, gender oppression was closely linked to caste and economic oppression. Upper caste landlords controlled not just the labor and crop shares, but also the women of sharecropping households. Pausing here for a second, this was extremely disturbing to read because, again, I emphasize this. I have read about this movement. I have read about peasants' uprising. And this part that landlords owned the women of the sharecropping households of the peasants was never mentioned to us. And this is such a major part. Like, this is so important to know. It's disgusting. It's horrifying, right? Like, can you imagine being taught about the civil rights movement in US and not knowing that black women were being raped by white men when they were slaves? Like, can you just fathom that? And yet in our own history we are very comfortable leaving out like very relevant chunks. So Beena Agarwal quotes a woman activist over here who says, like the mangoes of the sharecropper's trees, like the bananas of his garden, like the goats of his thatched roof, like the eggplant from his garden, his daughters and daughters-in-law were the landlord's property. If the landlord expresses his wish, the daughter or the wife of the sharecropper will be sent to the landlord's house. Also, if you think this has stopped, it hasn't. Very recently in West Bengal, certain countryside, areas, like smaller areas that don't get a lot of national attention, there were incidents of girls and women being forcibly sent to, now of course landlords are not the most powerful ones, it's politicians, to even the ruling party's politicians' homes. So this still continues. Fun, like, absolutely, I don't know. Anyway, I continue the quoting from the book. Women of poor peasant households thus faced both economic and sexual exploitation. Their sexual harassment added to the symbolic subjugation of their families as well. Moreover, poor rural women were amongst the worst sufferers in the 1943 Bengal famine. Not surprisingly, therefore, both Hindu and Muslim women participated in the movement in large numbers. We are talking about the Tebaga movement now, right? Many women whom Cooper, you're going to hear a couple of names. They were researchers of specific aspects of, in the Indian freedom struggle and the colonial rule. And she has quoted some of them. We are not going to get into their history, right? That's completely different from the subject, right? So this is one name, another name will come in, and I will tell you at that point of time. So many people whom Cooper interviewed commented that women were often more militant than the men. She described some of the ways in which they participated. Women who remained in the villages during the day tended to become responsible for warning people of police arrivals by sounding alarms, blowing conch shells, for example. They provided shelter and food for activists. Women who frequently went to the market became responsible in some areas for communication and carrying messages between organizers. In some villages, there were special Nari Bahinis or Mohila Bahinis. Mohila is women, Bahinis is corps, right? So, women's corps, which guarded villages. Poor peasant women participated in meetings and demonstrations, were in delegations to landlords and occasionally members of Tebaga committees, although not holding particular positions. However, women's militancy was remembered mostly because of their actions to resist arrests, when they displayed incredible courage, initiative, and heroism in rescuing people. Women's weapons of resistance were the commonplace objects of their daily existence. Household implements used for husking and chopping, wood, brooms, knives, etc., with which they sought, often successfully, to disarm police parties. Okay, I have taken out a lot of this, but just for your listening pleasure, I want to tell you how these women drove away the police. Okay. And it says, as the police entered the village, bells and conch shells used to be blown and the echo could be heard from one end to the other. It was the peasant women folk who organized this novel form of warning. Almost immediately on hearing this, all the women folk would take hold of broomsticks, lathis, and their husking pestles and form a barricade on the village road so that the police could not enter. In disarming police parties, in resisting arrests, and in rescuing people, women's initiatives often assumed heroic dimensions. On several occasions, attempts by landlords to appropriate the harvested paddy from the peasants' fields with police help were also thwarted by women. For instance, in the Kendemari village, they least expected that a militant group of peasant women would advance with daws, choppers, and broomsticks. Now, this comes the best part. Tied to their sari ends, they carried handful of dust mixed with chili powder. As they approached the police, they threw this powder in their eyes and the police ran for their lives. Oh my God. I really fucking like these women. So amazing, dude. And this is what I mean by socialist feminism, right? When you fight for women's rights, you're not just in particular classes, not like fucking Lenin and fucking Sheryl Sandberg, but with intersectional members, right? People of all castes and especially people who do not have any other remedy, right? And often against the men from their on their own side, because patriarchy was still very much a violent, terrible thing, right? So while they were fighting with men, they also had to fight against their own men, which is what we are going to talk about right after this ad break, to be honest. Again, as usual, I don't have great ways of leading to ads. I'm just excited about women throwing chili powder in policemen's eyes. That's just glorious to me. That is just one of the best things I have ever read. So you go enjoy the ad meanwhile, and we'll see you in a bit. All right, welcome back. We were talking about Mars women throwing powder, chili powder in policemen's eyes, and the policemen running for their lives. Just in case you needed something, a little pick me up in your life today. This is what I am going to go back to whenever I'm having a bad day. But
Ashwata,
anyway,
I don't think you're violent. Such a calm and warm person.
so I'm continuing to quote from a field of one's own, gender and land rights in South Asia. And this time we are talking about how these women were fighting against the oppression they were facing from the men in whose favor they were fighting, right?
Hmm.
So I'm quoting from the book. It says, during the course of the campaign, a number of gender concerns also came up within the movement, such as wife beating, women's rights to income from their sale of poultry and other small products, and their breaking the norms of parda. Many women objected to wife beating both in the Tevaga peasant courts and in local branches of Mars. As one woman graphically put it, when the husband and wife together are dying in the field, in the battle for Tebaga, when the two are fighting against the enemy, how then was it possible for one soldier to beat the other after returning home? In some areas, the campaign against domestic violence made a strong impact, but in others, the culprits got off lightly. Again, especially in Muslim areas where male peasants objected to women attending the Kisan Samiti meetings, Kisan Samiti being peasant committees,
Hmm.
some of the women retorted, it does not hurt your sense of propriety when we sow or harvest in the fields along with you. How does it become objectionable when we want to attend Kisan Samiti meetings? Objections nevertheless continued and the issue was never settled. And you see that even today. Again, some of the biggest industries of unpaid or underpaid labor, unorganized sectors, all have mostly women in it, right? You see this across the globe. So, men have always wanted women to do the work, to come in and actually do the hard work, to break their backs. But they don't want to share the table,
Hmm.
right? They don't want to let go of their privilege. And this is true for all privileged sections, right? Historically, continues till today, right? Old white men think that they are being discriminated against simply because the number of other people, including women, white women, women of color, men of color, like just people who don't look like old white men, people other than them are entering their space. So they feel like there is discrimination against white men. I have heard a white man say that to me in my business school, that it does feel like there is discrimination against white men at this point of time. This is not, yeah, yeah. I have heard a Brahmin man in my school tell me that there is actually like there's this reverse racism thing
Hmm.
of reverse casteism now because I don't remember what the exact situation was, but apparently there were a lot of people from the SC/ST community who did not engage with their family for some reason, which, I mean, Dalits are dying, they're being killed even today for sharing water, for using the
Hmm.
communal well, for having a wedding, for celebrating their
Hmm.
own wedding. But sure, you were left out in.
Didn't you have any ground up chili and dust ready with you
I'm not a
to
violent
deal with
person,
them?
Sandy.
Of course you're not.
You're tell that to your face then. Your face says otherwise.
I have never done all of this. This was, I feel like, okay, very honestly, I feel like when you're dealing with armed people, arm yourselves. Absolutely.
No,
If,
no, I'm 100% on board with that. I have no
yeah,
issues whatsoever. I was
yeah.
checking with you.
No, I am also on board with it. Like if somebody is talking to you, talk back. But somebody comes at you physically, my friend, absolutely go all out. If somebody is is charging it. And this is not, this I'm not saying philosophically. This was when you grow up in the 90s in Delhi, where you get groped before you hit puberty. Absolutely, this is what children should have been taught, because that's what we taught ourselves. And to a large
Hmm.
extent, we were safe because one, we did not give the benefit of doubt to a single man, not a single man. That kept us safe, right? And I still stand by it. I will never ever budge from that. And secondly, if somebody came at us physically, oh my God, how we went at them physically. Like, I have had keys held between my fingers, and somebody approaches their hand towards me, my key would go out and it would hurt them. Maybe
Hmm.
they were looking to grope and run away. Maybe they were looking to do something more. Maybe they would have killed me. I'm not waiting to find out. There is
Hmm.
a single physical approach. You hit, absolutely. That I don't think is violence. Even legally, it's not violence, to be very honest. It's considered self defense.
I don't know how we reached here. This was a very simple question. Did you not have any mirchi handy to throw it in their face? Is what I asked. That's all.
So I replied saying, when people are talking, you talk. When people are
Acha, okay.
physically attacked. So, see what I mean by you don't listen?
No, no, I was listening. The issue was I was listening for way too long.
Sure, sure,
Anyway, go on, go on.
sure.
Ooh.
Sandy's retorts are good. He
Yeah.
always covers up for what he doesn't do. Never listens to me, but
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Uh,
absolutely shift the blame to some other person before I get caught.
Yeah.
what blame am I shipping onto another person, dude?
It's my fault for making it long, not that you were not listening to my first part of the argument at all.
No, no, I was listening. I was listening.
No, Sandy, I've lived with you for 7 years now. I know you were not listening. I can
So
tell.
I listened to at least 4 years out of the seven, so it's fine. That's more than 50%. Okay.
And that's all. That is all.
I
Listen.
mean, more than 50 is above average, dude. That's all anyone can ask for, you
Yeah.
know.
Actually, considering how men are, I guess your bar is only low. So
That is true. I can't
it's fine.
pretend to be otherwise. That
It's
is
fine.
true.
Anyway, coming back to Mars. After partition, Mars continued to do some important work. Wikipedia says in 1947, the name of the organization was changed to Paschim Bang Mahila Atma Raksha Samiti, translated to West Bengal Women's Self Defense Association. On 27th April 1949, Mars organized a rally in Calcutta in support of the hunger strike of political prisoners. Police opened fire on the demonstration at Bao Bazar, killing 6 persons. 1949 means the police were Indian police, not British
Hmm.
police. Make of that what you will. If you have a particular opinion about the police, I hope I am clarifying certain things. Anyway, by April 1954, Mars claimed a membership of 18,000, out of whom the majority belonged to the peasantry or worked in jute mills. The working class revolution, right? Which,
Hmm.
considering this was linked to the Communist Party, I'm not surprised. But CPIM has done really shitty things in the country as well. Like, CPIM has its own share of megalomaniacs. If you speak to somebody from Bengal or Kerala, you will hear about it. That it definitely does not mean that they were doing everything right, but Mars was for the people, by the people organization, right? Wikipedia continues, Mars took the initiative for the foundation of the National Federation of Indian Women 2 months later. This organization is functioning to date, and they
Hmm.
continue to take on very, very important people in the country today. Like, while I was looking this up, the organization has filed petitions against some of the most popular names. They have even challenged Supreme Court and everything. So it's an important organization, right? That was about Mars, right? Now we come to the last organization that I'm talking about, and there are far, far more organizations. These are just the three that I am talking about because we don't have the time to talk about everything, right? But definitely it's worth a read looking up in the history. And I also wanted to do something which I did not get the time to do in this episode, which is compare these organizations to what the larger movement scene look like in India. For example, in 1910, when the first organization was formed, at that time the Indian freedom struggle was not great. Like it was not a, we were still only asking for parliamentary participation and everything. When the first organization that we spoke about was formed, which is called Bharat Sri Mahamandal, right? But by the time Mars came about, this was peak freedom struggle, and a lot of things were happening, like Bengal famine was happening and
Hmm.
everything. So it was a far more pervasive movement, right? So it is worth looking into what was happening across the country as well, but we don't have the time to get into that, so maybe some other day. Right now I want to talk about the last organization that I included in this episode, which is Dalit Mahila Samiti. uh, Dalit Mahila Samiti is primarily in UP, Uttar Pradesh.
Hmm.
For the listeners from outside the country, it's one of the major states, the largest states in the country, in India, with also one of the largest bank of issues. Right?
I have a question.
Yes.
When all of this was happening, mostly in the north, nothing was happening in the south,
No, I'm
or
sure there was a lot happening in the south. It is,
okay.
I did find a couple of them. I'll be honest. So I wanted to keep the socialist feminist angle from fighting against even the men within their own communities, right? I wanted to keep these nuances. South was a little better at that than
Hmm.
North was, at
Yeah,
least
that
from
was I
what I
was
found.
wondering.
At least from what
Yeah.
I found, North had
Yeah.
more problems. And I used the
Hmm.
past tense incorrectly, right? So I did want to include, and there were some really great organizations. Not to say, by the way, that the South doesn't have its issues. Again,
Yeah, yeah,
every
of
single
course.
place in the world has issues. South of India has its own terrible, terrible issues. Like casteism in Tamil Nadu is, I
Hmm.
mean, it's one of the most disgusting things. And I have met the only kind of Brahmins that I have met who call themselves Brahmins while introducing themselves shamelessly are Tamil Brahmins. I'm Tam
Wait,
Bram.
how do they? Oh,
I'm,
really? They
yeah,
introduce themselves as that?
yeah.
Wow.
So the South has an insane amount of issues. In this
Damn.
particular context, the North had some more issues. So I wanted to
Fair
focus on
enough.
that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the Dalit Mahila Samiti, DMS, as we are going to refer to it, was formally organized in 2002. The dates are not very clear. So Wikipedia says 2002 or 2004, but around that time only. And it was supported by this organization called Vanagan. Okay. Vanagan is
Hmm.
a feminist non-governmental organization. So DMS actually, Dalit Mahila Samiti actually comes out of Vanagan, right? But before this became a fully formed organization, it was first organized as early as 1992 in order to mobilize Dalit women. So Wikipedia says this, and I'm continuing the quote. It is based in the state of Uttar Pradesh. The group has 7 different clusters in 2 subregions of the Chitrakoot district. Men may join the women's group as Sahayogi or supporters, and there is a yearly membership fee for everyone, right? Members of the group receive a badge and information about Dalit leaders. DMS began to create dialogues among women in various communities in UP, which led to some women taking on leadership positions. Each village
Hmm.
selects 2 women to represent the local DMS chapter at the cluster level. Clusters are organized to have presidents, treasurers, and secretaries who meet once a month. So it's a full fledged, proper organization,
Hmm.
right? My main source of information for this organization was a report called The Dalit Women's Movement in India, Dalit Mahila Samiti, by Janvi Andharia, the author, and Anandi Collective, an organization, an NGO. right? A non-profit, basically. It says the roots of the Dalit Mahila Samiti lie in feminist organizing. It has taken many years for Dalit women to emerge as leaders of their own movement. In the late
Hmm.
1980s and early 1990s, I want to just pause for a second. 1980s, 1990s is crazy early.
Huh?
Like
Yeah.
it's like crazy early as in not early. It's too recent into the future. And that was the first time there was a formal mobilization of Dalit women. Not because
Did you
Dalit
mean to
women,
say recent in the history?
I literally said recent after I said early, Sandy. How many times in one episode are you not going to listen to me?
No, you said recently in the future.
No, I said recently.
Do you want me to play back?
Okay, never mind. I believe you. Fine. I meant to say recently, in the recent past, right?
Ah,
It
yes.
is
Okay.
Hmm.
it's too recent for it to be anywhere near comfortable, right? And not because Dalit women didn't want to organize, but can you imagine the kind of oppression they faced well into 1990s? We were born, guys. Like
Hmm.
it's really horrifying, right? I continue the quote from this book. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, it was a struggle for these women to simply step out of their homes and demonstrate that they could handle technology. As they gained experience, they developed the ability to form a separate women's movement with a clear focus on Dalit women's issues. Since 2002, Dalit women leaders have engaged in sharpening their goals and structures, and the formal naming of the Dalit Mahila Samiti took place in 2003. The area known as the Bundelkhand region, where DMF is active, consists of ravines and forests, and access to villages is difficult due to poor roads and infrastructure. I mean, it is UP, and some of the best places of UP struggle with this. So, Bundelkhand region, of course, is struggling with this. We know what the government is doing there. To be fair, their entire focus was this massive project of building a temple over there. So they did not really have the time to construct roads and schools and colleges and provide water and food, and all of these less important things were not taken into consideration because they were building a mandir, a temple at that point of time.
Hmm.
So I guess understandable.
See, the logic is you're not listening to what they're saying. You accuse me of not listening. You are not listening, Ashmita.
What did I not
See,
say?
if you have God, you have everything else. You don't need anything else.
Devotion is what you need.
Yes, that's all you need
Yes,
in life.
absolutely. Absolutely. As we have seen, it is just, as long as you don't need to feed yourselves, you don't need to have any
Of course you don't.
safety. Of course not.
You need to waste some milk and food on God.
Yes.
You don't eat it. You
You
waste
don't
it
need
on
to.
them so that
Yes.
they give you food.
Yes.
So weird form of bribery. If they took something else, I would understand this trade. Like, why am I giving you food to give me food? What is this behavior?
The, it's basically a very weird form of MLM, dude. It is MLM.
Continue quoting. Because of the inaccessibility until very recently, this region has also been known as a safe haven for dacoits. Dacoits, as in armed gangs.
Hmm.
The Dalit communities there face repression not only from the upper caste state, but also often caught between the violence of the state and the dacoits. I want to emphasize one thing that I despise over here, which is a very traditional liberal problem to have. Is that can we please stop calling a certain caste upper caste? It's already 2000 something. And I'm quoting from a recent report. So it was completely fine in the 1900s. It's weird right now. But anyway, that is the least of the problem in this entire situation. But words do hold power, so it's also something to be mindful of. Anyway, let me take you to the founding organization, right? Which is Vanagan, which is the feminist NGO from which DMS was born. Sandy, by any chance, do you know the meaning of the word Vanagan? I don't.
It sounds like a Tamil word to me, but I'm sure it's not a Tamil word. One usually means forest.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm assuming it has something to do with the way to the forest or something along those lines, or with the forest.
It might be because I might be pronouncing it completely incorrectly because it's Vanangana. So it's
Oh,
Vanagan.
Vanangan.
Vanangan.
It's Vanangan.
Vanangan.
My God.
is
Yes.
it
That
Vanamagan?
completely changes
No.
the word.
Vanangan. Yeah, I was
Yes, it's the
pronouncing it
courtyard of the
incorrect.
forest. Courtyard of the
Oh,
forest.
Angan,
Yes.
Angan.
Angan.
Ah.
Vanangan.
Of
They
course,
should
Angan.
have,
Angan we know.
yeah, but they should have added a double A over there. That is not my fault.
Or maybe you could have taken a breath and read better. I don't know.
No,
Either
it
one
is
of
still,
those.
it's, it just seems like a lot of A's. Glad I asked you this. Anyway, so Vanangan was basically the feminist NGO from which DMS was born. This organization initially functioned as a grassroots feminist organization prioritizing Dalit women's participation and voice. And there were a lot of overlaps with the later formed Dalit Mahila Samiti, right? For nearly a decade, the agenda centered on, for both these organizations, at that point of time, a singular organization, centered on individual Dalit women seeking justice against violence. Then in
Hmm.
2002, things changed. The Gujarat anti Muslim riots happened under the government of our now brought to power and made into God Prime Minister Narendra Modi, right? He was the one who was in charge of the state when state and Hindutva gangs absolutely destroyed Muslim communities. Like, for those of you who are unaware of the 2002 Gujarat anti Muslim riots, some of the most horrifying incidents of violence against women that I've read have been in this, and our very hailed prime minister, at that time the minister of state minister, the, what is it called?
Chief
What
Minister.
chief
Chief
minister.
Minister.
Chief minister did
They're constantly
absolutely nothing.
reinventing new meanings for all the words now, Ashmita. I mean, we're
He
rewriting the
did
fucking dictionary here.
he did absolutely nothing at that point of time. There were accounts of him stopping any aid being sent. So, very standard MO that was used, and we have very conveniently forgotten about all of that. So that at this point of time, a shift happened in Vanangan. So Vanangan basically, while it was working towards Dalit women, it realized that in general, minorities in our country and across the world, and women from minority communities were some of the most unsafe people, and literally nothing in the state worked for them, right? So Vanangan convened 300 Dalit women and started talking about this. And this sparked discussions on religious identity, caste, Hinduism, and fundamentalism, and local events like Harish Chandra, the Dalit political activist who was murdered by a bunch of privileged caste people. This boosted a lot of local leadership. And at
Hmm.
that time, also, a lot of internal biases came up. They were like, we are talking about a particular bunch of people, but there is a lot of voices. There are a lot of voices that are missing in the organization. Unlike a lot of privileged people, because Dalit women knew what it was to experience absolute destruction because of false sense of entitlement and privilege that other people had, they brought together a lot, like the work expanded quite a lot. So at this point of time, and also, by the way, other interesting things were happening, like Bahujan Samajwadi Party, the BSP, was also coming
Yeah.
up at this point of time, right? They were gaining more popularity. So, what Vanangan decided was that in 2001, 2002, they said that foregrounding Dalit identity, DMS will be a separate entity, Dalit Mahila Samiti will be a separate entity. with Dalit women setting norms like primary female membership and no self-help group prerequisite, right? Because the
Hmm.
SHGs in our country also did not allow, and I don't know about right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if they still are discriminatory. But at that time, they did not allow oppressed castes to come in, right? So Dalit women took charge. And at the same time, Vanangan expanded its purview and its work, its activism to more groups of women, right? Oppressed women. We are not going to get into what Vanangan did because we are talking about DMS, and I want to talk about what DMS specifically did. So, DMS strategies basically evolved in two phases, right? Phase one was Vanangan led, which focused on case by case mobilization around violence, so individual action, also wages and basic rights, right? They focused on building women's capacities amidst feudal village councils without formal groups. I wanted to also talk about this group because it is so similar to what the Bharat Stree Mahamandal was doing in fucking 1910. So while women of privileged castes were fighting for their rights in 1910, the same rights Dalit women needed to fight for in fucking 1990s and 2000s, barely 20 years
Hmm.
back, right? Phase 2, which is post 2002, emphasized collective Dalit consciousness via community dialogues, proactive annual planning, and alliances like the Dalit Network and informal BSP ties as well, right? So there were ties, but they were very particular about it. There would be no party banners at the rallies and everything. Community specific action. DMS became that Dalit arm, like arm for the Dalit people in post 2002, right? So it shifted from like an individual support to systemic fights for dignity, for enhancing credibility, for violence reporting that happened quite a lot, and just broader inequalities which exist consistently, right? So their goals, this I took from the report verbatim. It says to change caste equations in the area or region where they work, to promote the leadership of local women, to protest against all forms of violence against women and men, to negotiate their terms with members of the upper caste during elections, to ensure that the benefits of government schemes announced under the new Dalit run regime and the power flows to all eligible Dalits. The new Dalit run regime, which they meant because this report was written in 2008 and BSP came to power in 2007 in UP. So they are referring to
Hmm.
BSP, right? By the way, I have not taken that, but actually, you know what? I will link that article. There's an article of 2017 when Akhilesh Yadav came to power, and they interview the Wire. It's an article in the Wire. I have not kept that because it would be too long. Where they interview the women of the Dalit Mahila Samiti, and oh my God, they have completely destroyed what Akhilesh Yadav has been doing. Like, absolutely, like the nonsense politics that he has played. These women have called him out on it so hard. So it was pretty fantastic. And then the reporter also says that what if this is 2017, right? So Akhilesh Yadav still had some power going on over there. And
Hmm.
they're like, what if now it's fully BJP that comes in? And the women are like, are you fucking shitting us? Like, how is this a choice for us? No. So it's really an eye-opening article. I will link that,
Hmm.
although I have not included any of that in this episode. Anyway, it's 2026 and the DSM continues to battle many of the same issues it did in 2003. The Citizens for Justice and Peace, CJP, a human rights organization, mapped the cases of violence against minorities, Dalits, and Adivasis in India in 2025. Some of the findings, it's a large report, some of the findings I'm telling you. Between the months of January and June 2025, CJP recorded recorded 113 incidents of caste atrocities on Dalit individuals across different states in India. Almost 19% of this is sexual violence. Approximately 10 rape cases are reported every day when it comes to Dalit women. There are 962 reported ongoing land conflicts in the conflicts database of Land Conflict Watch. Out of these, 116 conflicts are in the conservatory and forestry sector, with more than 450,000 people affected. These are also typically cases of privileged caste atrocities against oppressed castes and Adivasis. It's bad. It's really bad, right? So, to conclude this episode, right, I was like, let me look at the state of affairs for women globally in 2025. I knew things weren't great, but I didn't know they looked so grim, right? So, the UN says that 137 women and girls were killed every day by intimate partners or family members in 2024. In November 25, the World Health Organization and UN partners released a report that says nearly 1 in 3 women, that is estimated 840 million globally, have experienced partner or sexual violence during their lifetime. This is a very, very important part, a figure that has barely changed since 2000. So we have not progressed. All of the idiots who say feminism has gone too far, they don't read. This has been my standard contention that if you read, if you bother to Google the basic stuff, these are in the first 4 links that I found, and they are all like UN links, and they're links to the report. So if you just make the effort of not, I don't know, jacking off to things and spending one of those jack off sessions instead to just Google things and read about it, you wouldn't make statements like feminism has gone too far. Right.
For those who don't know what jacking off is, Ashmita, can you please?
For fuck's sake, Sandy.
Do.
It's for the promo, Ashmita. It's for the fucking promo.
A report by
Take one for the
UN
team.
A report by UN Women says 80% of people displaced by climate change are women. That same report also says after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, the rate of rape among displaced women rose 6 times the baseline rate in Mississippi for that year. Following the Canterbury earthquake, New Zealand police reported a 53% rise in domestic violence. In Ethiopia, there was an increase in girls sold into early marriage in exchange for livestock to help families cope with the impacts of prolonged droughts. Nepal witnessed an increase in trafficking from an estimated 3 to 5,000 annually in 1990 to 12 to 20,000 per year after the 2015 earthquake. Disastrous. What was happening after the Bengal famine in 1943-45 hasn't really changed in 2026. And there were a lot more reports, but thank fuck I ran out of time, right? I literally finished writing my notes yesterday because this was getting very depressing. So, yes, things are really fucking bad. And they have been really, really fucking bad for a really fucking long time. Okay. But what do you do? Like, one of the things that has come up multiple times in my discussion with feminist people, like feminists, also organizations doing a lot of feminist work, everything, what do you do? Because this is depressing, right? You can't just ignore it. Do something, like get down on the ground and do anything, something, right? And I'm going to give you some directions because oftentimes it feels like there's too much to do, right? But as all we can do as individuals is form parts of communities that are doing the actual work, right? So one major thing is find local organizations, and these can be work related. You don't always have to find local organizations that are doing charitable work. Sometimes it is necessary. For example, when the Delhi riots happened, right? This was in 2020 or 2021 when the Delhi riots happened, when the Hindutva gang basically burned down Muslim colonies. We would drive up to North Delhi to provide very basic materials that they needed, right? Because at that time, that was the necessity. So there are going to be times when you should participate in community initiatives, which has got nothing to do with you, right? But then in general, they can be work related as well. For example, I'm a part of this community called Nadi community. It's a women in climate organization, right? Lot of issues with every organization. So is it with Nati. It seems like there are mostly people with
Hmm.
from privileged backgrounds in urban cities that are over here, but it's something. It's a good step forward. It is connecting people with much needed funds, right? Like only 4% of private funds go into climate action, and out of that, barely anything goes towards women led organizations, while women are the one doing the most of the on ground work. So you see all of the agricultural and scientific changes that are happening that are being mostly led by women. Men are becoming tech bros, basically in the pretense of changing the world, doing something worse. Women are the one who are leading these. So find these organizations, get involved, right? I am from the sustainability sector, and I guarantee to you that we need more people. People are very, very open, having more young people come in and start doing on ground work. There are NGOs, get involved, right? Also, speaking of things you can do at work, go out of your way to hire women from marginalized communities. If I have learned one thing in my MBA, it is that absolutely incompetent as men are raking in the big bucks, sitting in high ass positions they have no business being in. We know people like that. We know people who have
Hmm.
got no special ability, no specific skill, nothing that makes them stand out from anybody. And in many, many cases, absolutely horrible. Like, really, sometimes you doubt if they have the ability to string two thoughts together. And they are doing exceptionally well. Very few at the top are qualified or competent enough to be there. Okay, merit is a sham. It doesn't exist. The only people who talk about it are people who get advantage from their privilege, right? Hire women from marginalized communities. People who are not afforded opportunities are usually far better at their jobs than bros who have been handed far too much in life and take very little responsibility for acknowledging their privilege, right?
Hmm.
We have seen this. Some of the people who have come in our purview, and people who have we have seen getting hired from marginalized communities have done exceptionally well. They just don't have the opportunities, right?
Hmm.
Also, if you are running businesses, this is so basic, but I cannot believe that this is still in discussion. Pay the same to men and women. Like, if you are, if especially if you are an HR, right? If you're hiring somebody for your employer and you know how much they pay to a man in a similar role, tell the woman you're hiring that number. HR people, you are tired of the shitty reputation you carry. Do something to change it. That reputation has come in because of what you have been doing, right? So enable women to ask for the same pay. This is just really unreasonably basic and continues to be such a massive fucking problem everywhere. Do something, right?
Yeah.
Also, for outside of work, read socialist feminist works. The best way to find these is to Google about marginalized communities movements. I understand if you don't want to read Das Kapital. I gave shade at the top of the episode, but I get it. It's a heavy fucking read, right? Like, I have read only one volume and it has taken me more than a year to read that one volume. It's a lot, right? But there are so many socialist feminist moves, and also Karl Marx was not a feminist, about marginalized communities. You Google them and you will find books on them, right? Or read the books that I was talking about in this episode, and I will anyway be linking them in the show description so you can find them there. Start off with that. They're simple reads, talk about really important situations, and they are, most of them are freely available, right? So go ahead and do that. And for people from my clan, marketing, but specifically advertising, you folks, stop making shitty Women's Day ads. This is so basic. Without a single exception, every boss I have had who has wanted me to make a post for Women's Day has been a complete and absolute idiot. Like, literally, no good boss has ever asked me that. The good ones did the real work. Sometimes the good ones were forced to ask on behalf of clients. I will admit that. But they never asked to do it for them. So if your boss comes to you with this nonsense demand, understand first that they are absolute idiots. Do not get rattled by it. Show them the severe backlash that brands have faced online. That's a great way to discourage your bosses, is what I have found. If you don't want to do a particular thing, just make a list of really, really terrible reactions and show it to them. They are usually cowards and they will back off, and ask them to change a policy instead, to level the playing field. Say that, we can do this, give suggestions. See, I keep harping on this. The guys at the top don't really know how to get solutions. They have no idea of the ground level reality, right? So you have to feed them solutions, right? They pretend that it's great leadership quality, but it is actually incompetence. Now that you know that, go to them with a policy that you think needs changing, and say that, we can do this, and that is how we promote ourselves on Women's Day, and we will not face backlash. So that is, might not work. I have no fucking idea, but it's better than making those shitty ads that you make, right? I mean, they will do it for PR purposes, of course. Don't expect them to do any good. Right. So there are multiple ways of going about this. One more don't is, please don't get involved with organizations like Lean In and Sheryl Sandberg. In general, where there are mostly white feminists in corporates, stay away from them. They're not doing anything good. Absolutely fucking stay away from them. Right. And that brings me to the end of this very depressing episode. Hope you had a good Women's Day.
Will you proceed with your recommendation or
Yes,
like
I have a recommendation. Yes. But I just wanted to, for the depression to just sort of seep in. Anyway, since we are
do you
talking,
think our regular life is rainbows and butterflies? Do they need yet another podcast to depress them further? I mean, what are we trying to do here, Ashmita?
my MO is that I come across really shitty things, and then because I have a problem, I can't stop reading about shitty things. So I now need to pass it on to you. Why should I suffer alone? My recommendation of the week. Recommendation time. So, since we are talking so much about socialist feminism, my recommendation of this is something that Sandy introduced to me, which is this amazing streaming channel called Dropout TV, which proves that a successful business can be built without exploiting people and without giving the world more shitholes, aka billionaires, right? So, Dropout TV, if you all are not aware of it, absolutely wonderful organization. It is a socialist and a feminist organization as well, but it is also a for profit business, right? Before we get into how it functions, it's this streaming channel where game shows are held, comedy. Their talent is mostly comedians and improv actors. They have Dimension 20, where D&D, is being held. Then there are numerous really fun game shows that happen over there. Very smart, intelligent, and hilarious, and oftentimes really vulgar, crass humor, which is right up my alley. I love it so much, and it's just glorious. Prakhar, if you haven't seen it, it is just the best content that I have ever seen on television or on the internet, right? It is
I
absolutely
think we'd be
amazing.
remiss to not mention that it's a paid subscription model. Obviously, without
It's
that,
a
you
paid
won't be able to
subscription
see
model.
most of this. Yeah.
Yes. It's a paid subscription model, but I would any day pay to drop out than to any other streaming service. And this is why. That's what I want to tell you. So, like I mentioned, they offer far more than industry rates to its talent and crew. Hey, there is, just to give you an example, the stand up comedian Gianmarco Soresi, he made more money filming one episode of one of their shows called Game Changer than he did for his entire role in Paramount show Clutch. He was also, yesterday, we were listening to a podcast where he said that I appeared in a show with Netflix for a week, and the amount that Netflix paid me for a week was dwarfed by what Game Changer and Dropout TV paid Gianmarco for one episode. That's the way you work with talent, right? It shares also, Dropout TV shares its profits with employees and other workers. Sam Reich, the CEO, earned almost nothing during the first 2 years of dropout ownership, while everyone else continued getting paid and they had a share in the profits. And in
Hmm.
2022, so they started off in 2020, right before the pandemic. In
COVID.
fact, their first episode, when they were supposed to record, there was a lockdown. So it was bad. And in 2022, within 2 years, he earned over $1 million in a year, which is fantastic money,
Yeah.
right? It is also one of the most inclusive groups of people I have ever seen. All kinds of races, all kinds of genders. And all kinds of genders, I mean all genders, like the whole spectrum, not this bullshit of there are only men and women. People from all sorts of backgrounds, right? Everybody is treated wonderfully well, respected for the role they play in the show and in society, and for the people that they are. And you can see it. You can see it in the amazing productions that they have, right? And this is the only right way to run a business. Capitalism is not the right way.
Hmm.
This proves it. This proves that if you run a socialist feminist organization, business, the top does well, so does the bottom of the rung. Every
Yeah.
person in the hierarchy does well. You don't need somebody to do exceptionally bad for you to do well, right? The CEO is making $1 million per annum. That is in 2022. I'm sure he makes more now. That's great money. You
Hmm.
don't need to make $110 million. And maybe after 10 years, they're a new organization. Maybe after 10 years, he does. But other people will still be getting paid as much. They will still be getting profit sharing. They will still do well, right? That is what a socialist feminist structure looks like. So if
Yeah.
anything you're participating in does not look like that, it is not feminism, and it's most definitely not socialist feminism. Firstly, if you have organizations, movements, etc., that need work, that need people to join in, you want to talk more about it, or you want to know about such organizations, right? I have participated in many such organizations. I know people who have, and I can probably find some for you. Reach out to me, not me personally, but reach out to us at don't know do care one at gmail.com. The one is numerical, or you can DM us on Instagram or leave us a comment on YouTube. The handle for both these channels are at DKDC Podcast. Also, if you like what you hear, please like us, rate us on any of the podcast channels that you find us on. But also, please share this. We get our
Hmm.
listeners from people recommending us. So we are depending on you to spread the word. So please share it with them so that we can continue doing this, and so that I can eventually quit my job and become a really useless member of the society, also called a podcaster. That's my ambition in life. So help us, please do that.
If nothing else convinces them, this should definitely convince them that you want to be yet another useless member of society. Thank you for that, Ashmita. That definitely helped our case. Yes. Now the listeners are just swarming in. I can hear them swarming in now by the millions. Fucking hell. Okay. Just ruining the case immediately after presenting the case. Yes.
No, but please do share it. We need more viewers, we need more listeners, we want to have more conversations, and very honestly, we would like to be able to put more effort and time and hopefully
Yeah, full-time
resources
effort
and
into
money
this for sure.
into this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. To do a significantly better job than we are doing right now.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And on that note, we will be dropping out of this episode now. So until next time, take care. Bye bye.